And good morning, everybody. It's Friday. You made it through the week. Congratulations. If you're joining us, my name is Bryan Armentrout, joined by Tia Glave. Tia is with foodsafetykatalyst.com. And you are joining us today for Yorkie Chat, one of the best shows on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube.
Yes.
We talk all things Yorkshire Terrier.
I love Yorkies. I'm so
We
excited.
love our Yorkies, right? We have our Yorkie in the corner here. Everything you want to know about Yorkies. How do you potty train them? How do you live with them? How do you get them groomed, right? Grooming is really important, right, Tia? It's a hard thing.
Absolutely. How do you carry them? What type of totes do you need?
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, if you're going for the look from like someone like Paris Hilton or something like that, how do you copy that look? I mean, there's just it's amazing all of the different things that we can talk about when it comes to Yorkies. And as a matter of fact, we can even talk about photographs too, right? So how many photographs do you have? I don't know if I want to share that or not, though, Tia. I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. But
you know what? I'm pretty sure I have hundreds of photos of Yorkies.
Because at the very least, right, you can see here. So this is Lenny here, right? So Jeanette, welcome to Yorkie Chat. So we want to know what do you think about Yorkies, right? Everything Yorkies are here for you. So what are good breeders? What type of things you need to worry about on that side, right? There's just so much information. And Renee has put in here, my assistant, the information on Yorkies and the breed and where they came from. Just amazing. So Tia, did you know that Yorkshire Terriers were originally bred to kill rats? They were
really?
Yes. So in England, they were a working dog, right? Like most breeds, they were just out there doing their thing, and then all of a sudden they got thrown in a house and they put bows in their hair and they didn't know what was going on.
Right. Now you would not even know that they used to do some hunting.
Yeah, exactly. Good morning, Innocent. Good morning, Jill. Nice to have you here, Austin.
Good morning.
More Yorkie fans. We love our Yorkie fans. Here's a squeak for you. Gotta love the Yorkies.
I love it.
So
I also love it that my dog is not around, because otherwise he'll be like, "What is that noise?" He is not a Yorkie.
So obviously, kind of what we're doing here, right, is a little April Fool's, right? You came here for Food Safety Chat. Now you think you're in the right spot, but guess what? You are in the right spot, because this is not Yorkie Chat. You came here for Food Safety Chat, right?
Yes.
So we're going to talk all things. And Tia, I'm going to this is the challenge. I am going to link in Yorkshire Terriers in our topic today.
Ooh.
Can you believe it? So today we're talking about, guys, food. Renee. Renee's my assistant. He's awesome. So now I gotta get my head back in the game here on this April Fool's Day. So food safety culture is something that's on a lot of people's minds, and part of this, and what I kind of wanted to go over today, is how to actually do these type of programs, right? And install these type of things in your operations. And over my career, Tia, there's some things that I've learned, and we're going to jump into those. But first off, we'll do a reset. We'll hit the reset button. So hi, everybody. My name is Bryan Armentrout, and I am with the Food Safety Foundation and the Food Leadership Group, coming to you this Friday with the Food Safety Chat. And we do all things food safety, and we live stream on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And the purpose of this is to have a dialogue and a conversation, and not listen to a presentation. So I'm very fortunate to bring on experts like Tia, who join me to talk about the topic on a Friday. And we do this every Friday at this time. So 8 a.m. Mountain, where I live in Loveland, Colorado, 10 a.m. where Tia is out on the East Coast in lovely Baltimore. And Tia is a friend of mine who works with Jill Stuber and at catalyst.com. And they focus on something in their business that I think is super important. And we're really going to get into that today. And kind of at a high level, a good way to think of this is, if anybody, I don't care what you do, engineering, quality, whatever field you're in a company, you need to develop two skill sets if you're going to be successful. You need to develop the technical skills that you need to do your job, and you need to develop the people skills you need to do your job. And that is so important. So often we think, especially in quality, and I saw this time and time again, that collecting the alphabet soup of initials after your name, right? So PCQI, SQF, you name it, is somehow going to be the magic key that provides you a successful career. And Tia's right. Nope, it is not, right? You need to develop your people skills. And Tia and Jill do a fantastic job of helping people with that. So really happy to have her today. Happy to be here. Part of this, and Tia, this is something that I always do, and I always regret it, because I want to jump over the simultaneous drink with everybody. So get that mug in there. That's awesome. Tennessee, the volunteers. So everybody join us for a drink here on this Friday morning of your favorite beverage. Mine's coffee, and that is some good coffee. Bought some chicory coffee. I was thinking about New Orleans a couple days ago. Bought that and made it in the morning for my wife. I like it, but not
so much.
No, she wasn't expecting it, right? So I got one of these, right? One of these.
No. Well, me, I just transferred my water over to my mug.
And it's lovely. It's lovely. So food safety culture, right? Everybody's talking about it. How do you actually implement it? So one of the key things that you need to realize in your career is that you only control so much, right? So I was vice president of quality at several companies, and I had a lot of people working for me. But guess what? I still only had a fraction of the company working for me. Right. There was entire other reporting structures and operations and accounting and finance and marketing and you name it, who didn't report to me. Which means if I wanted to get something done, I had to work with them, right? Horrible, right? You have to actually work with them. And a good example of this then is, how do you negotiate and how do you influence other people outside of that? And a good thing to look at that is things that don't have power in areas, and how do they do it, right? Children, right? How do children, oh my God, how do children get things? They get everything they want. Where are you going to vacation?
Or a tantrum.
Yeah. You're going to Disneyland. You didn't want to go to Disneyland. You're going to Disneyland. Right. And dogs, right? Yorkies or any other breed of dog, they know how to get what they want, right? If you sit down to eat a meal and you look down, who's sitting there, right? It's what's his is his and what's yours is his. And he wants a piece of that steak. And they use their skills and they use their ability to influence you to get what they want. And how do they do that, right? That's what you need to develop. You need to develop that skill set to do those type of things.
Yes.
Because, I mean, part of this, Tia, is, and the first thing I kind of thought about as we introduced this topic here today is around programs you want to implement, right? Is the number one rule is people hate. People hate change, right? Nobody wants to change.
Yeah, they do.
You come to your job, you've been doing it, everything's working just fine, and now this person from quality comes trotting up and wants to upset everything. It's like,
change something, add something.
Exactly, right? And you hear these phrases that people say, right? And the killer one, right, which needs to be absolutely stamped out of every company is, well, this is what we've always done it.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Oh my goodness, right? And a good example on the food safety side, Tia, is that a lot of times with companies, right, there's kind of pre and post recall mentality. And if a company hasn't had a food safety recall, a serious one, like a class 1 or something like this, there's a lot of ambivalence in the organization to that. Well, we've never had a recall before.
Right.
And
this has never affected us before.
Yeah. And what they're saying is past luck equals future luck.
Right. Exactly. And we know that is not true.
Absolutely not, right? We keep spinning that revolver, the cylinder on the revolver and pulling the trigger, and everything's fine.
Right.
Well, one day it's not.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden they start saying, "Oh my God!" Right?
Right. Oh, we have to do better. But our jobs is to make sure that our companies don't get to that point. And like you said, people don't want to change. Well, they might want to change. They just don't like to change. And most of the time you are trying to influence people that don't report directly to you. So you can't tell them, well, this is the way that we now do it. and they're going to fall in line because their performance appraisal is a part of it, right? You have to influence them to get there.
Yep, and that's an important thing you just said, because everybody's got a boss. And when you're working in a company, one of the rules in a company is you don't work for a company, you work for a boss, right? And that's the person at the end of the year that you're sitting across the table from, who's giving you your review.
Exactly.
And that person is deciding whether or not you're good, bad, or maybe we need to make some improvements here.
Right.
And that's the person you want to please, right? So if you're going to the procurement group and asking for things, that's the filter that's going through their mind. And they're saying, okay, my bonus for this year is based upon order pricing, completeness of orders, whatever it is in procurement that they're measuring.
Right.
That's what they care about. Right? And food safety, odds are food safety is not in their objectives. It should be.
Should be. Right. And that's how you know what type of culture you have. Once you're at, what we like to call a world-class food safety culture, every part of the organization, pretty much every part of the organization, has some type of food safety, food quality goals, where they know where they impact food safety and how they need to improve in their area to prevent things from happening in the future or to close a gap. That's when you know that you have a really great culture, is when someone in procurement or even in marketing, thinking about the things that marketing think about and putting on the label. If they have a food safety lens, then you know that you're on the right path.
100%. Yep. And guess what? That information is gathered and figured out by talking with people, right?
That's right.
Talking with R&D and operations and legal and communications. And all of this needs to come from senior leadership, right? Everybody needs to use the cliche, everybody needs to sing from the same hymnal, right? And if you see them doing that, you know that it's integrated. Another good defensive tactic I see as well too, Tia, is, well, that's not in my budget.
That is the biggest one. That's, that's the way that we've always done it, right? It's not in my budget. That's the one that people bring out, where it's like, we need to do this and it's not in the budget, or let's talk about it next year, and then it doesn't get in the budget again.
It's like that. It's like that Drake meme, right? It's like,
yeah, no, one of my favorites. Renee is really good with his memes. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So all right. So again, right, it kind of gets back to what we started off with: is quality is more than technical skills. You need to influence. And one of the people that I found recently who's actually really amazing at looking at this is a guy named Scott Adams. And he, as you may know, is the creator of the Dilbert comic strip. But what you may not know is he's a trained hypnotist, and he specializes in studying persuasion and influence.
Interesting.
And he's written, I've got him up here above my desk. So he's written several books. I think this is his most current one, Win Bigly by Scott Adams. He does a daily live stream, kind of like this. And he will analyze that's going to fall. I'm going to put that there. He analyzes the topics of the day. And he then uses this information and analyzes persuasion. He was one of the first people, and whether you like him or not, doesn't matter. He was one of the first people who said Trump's going to win the presidency. And he didn't base his opinion on policies or things like this. It was strictly on his ability to persuade. Right? Yeah. So I think that's a really valuable lesson of what we can take in quality and say, okay, if someone that you may not agree with, or someone who has a very abrasive personality or these type of things can get things done, how is he doing that, right? It's persuasion skills, right? Being able to communicate with other people and show them why doing what you want them to do is in their benefit as well. And that's what negotiation is all about, right?
And really inspiring people to take on your message. Because just you yourself, you could start that conversation. You can, we like to say a catalyst, sparking that change. You can spark it. You can be that initial flame. But you really need others in the boat with you to be able to completely transform an organization. And you do that through persuasion and influence, and inspiring others to take on your message. So you want people that's sitting in other functions to say, I want to prioritize food safety. I want to put a goal on my priority list this year. I want to measure my team's performance around it. That's when you start to really impact the culture, and really, pick up the flames throughout your organization and spread food safety across the organization when other people are speaking your same language in areas that you may not even be sitting in the room.
100%, 100%. And what we need to realize, and this is an important lesson in persuasion and negotiations and things like this, is you need to be able to put yourself in the mindset of the person you're talking with, right? In quality and food safety, we're technical people, and we think the technical people and other people think like we do. Oh, well, here's the data and here's the information and here's the trend line and here's how things are going, and we need, no.
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not.
Imagine yourself as a CEO of a large company, right? You're running a billion-dollar company, and you've got your directors, and you've got your board of directors, and you've got your shareholders, and all of these type of things.
Right.
If you're at that level, you don't think in details.
No, you don't.
You're always at the 30,000 foot level. You're thinking abstractly. All right, what are the overall strategic objectives? What are the trends that are coming in the future? How can I make my company what it needs to be 5 years from now? And I need to think about that today, right? Exactly. And if you have a good CEO, that's what they're doing, right? That's why they have direct reports. And that's why they think that way, right? So if you come to them with a detailed argument, they're going to think you're nuts.
Right. They're going to completely zone out. And most of the time, your CEO, most of the time, maybe all of the time, your CEO does not have the same technical skills as you.
Right.
So communicating those technical skills to someone that might not be as technical, or they're technical in another area, it's not going to sit. It's not going to sit right if that's your only argument around why they should prioritize certain things around food safety.
Exactly. And CEOs are people too. And I think I read somewhere, Tia, that if you're going to be an effective manager, you should really have no more than 6 direct reports. If it gets to be more than that, it's too much to handle. And look at how companies are organized. Even if you're the CEO, right? So you have senior vice presidents reporting to you. You've got operations, finance, marketing and sales, right? You have a handful of people who are reporting to you.
Yeah.
And then they do what they need to do. And then they have approximately that number of people reporting to them, right? Because business is always people. And you have to be able to interact and share information and get their attention.
Exactly.
And a lot of times quality people thinks, well, if I get in front of the CEO, then I can explain all this. Well, maybe,
but probably not. Right. Especially if you can't influence your direct manager. Because like you said, the higher you go up, the more you're thinking broadly, you're thinking longer term. Sometimes they're not even thinking about what's happening this year or next year. They're thinking 10 years down the road.
They should be. Yeah,
exactly. So, if you can't influence your direct manager, it's going to be really difficult for you to influence, the CEO of the organization.
Exactly. So here's a little thing I would do when I worked for companies. So once I settled in and got the feel of everything and understood what the company was about, I would schedule a meeting with the CEO and sit down with him. And I would say something provocative to get his attention. And I would say, okay, so Mr. Smith, I'm Bryan, you're head of quality. There's something that you need to understand about food safety. And I would talk about a few key points around that. And I would say this, I'm going to tell you something now that you're not going to like hearing because you're in charge of this company. Guess what? If there is a serious class 1 food safety issue in this company, you're not in charge. I am. Right. And that's the reaction I want is that. And then they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, what you need to understand as a CEO is this is not your point in time to go out forward with messaging. This is when you need to pull back and let me direct those processes because there's a whole bunch of moving things. And what we're doing here is we're protecting our consumers Right. We're protecting our company and our brands. And everything else in the company that we're doing needs to stop. Mm-hmm. Sales needs to pay attention. Marketing needs to pay attention. Everyone needs to understand that there needs to be one central focus of who's coordinating the activity, and that's me.
Exactly.
And you need to support that. Now you're speaking the CEO's language.
Right.
You're not hitting them with statistics. You're not saying the average recall is $30 million a year. All the things that are going to go, okay, well, fine, but that's not going to happen to us.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, you're communicating, like you said, their language, what they're used to hearing, how they like to communicate, what their role entails.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Another big piece of this is speaking in their language and what's in it for them, right? So you'll notice in that message to the CEO, I was explaining to him why he should care about this. Right. His job is to grow the company and protect the brands and give the shareholders value and all the things that CEOs are hired by the board of directors to do.
Right.
I have just shown him that if a class 1 recall happens, those things are threatened.
Right. Exactly. So that's what's in it for him. And when you look up in the organization or who you're talking to, it's so important to understand what their priorities are, what their roles are, what their role is and what they are looking at every day. Same thing if you're talking with people that are on the floor, right? And they also have an interest. They also have things that are of priority to them. So understanding, well, what's in it for me to do these extra checks, for me to change a little bit the way that I'm looking at product. Why should I do this?
Right.
And so like connecting it to like from a CEO standpoint, I love the way that you explain that because those are the things that he care about. When you're talking to someone on the floor, they care about, how can I do less work because I'm doing so many checks, my equipment's breaking down. How do you help eliminate some of the work for me? And then I find over and over that people who are actually making the food care about what our consumers say.
Oh, yeah.
And so linking that to them to say, hey, we got this complaint about this issue. We see, X amount of complaints a year for this. This is why we're adding this extra piece of equipment or this additional check because we're trying to get this consumer complaint down. I've had operators all the time say to me, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was a complaint. Yeah. I didn't realize that type of product was getting out. Oh, yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to eat the product if I saw that. Yeah. So connecting it to, because that's what's in it for them, right? They buy the product. They have a deep care for the product because they're literally making the product. Mm-hmm. That's what's in it for them. And, I've talked about that a lot with operators on the floor because I know that's what they care about. Just like if I was talking with my manager and up, I'm talking more about those strategic points.
Yep, absolutely, Tia. You're 100% correct. So one of the phrases I use with guys in the plant is, if you don't have 100% confidence that you can take any product off of the line, take it home, and feed it to your grandchildren and not give a second thought, I need to know. Right. You need to tell me.
Absolutely.
And that strikes home, right? Because those are the people that they love. Those are the people that they care about. And their family is just like everybody else's family, and they want that trust too. And if you break that trust, oh my goodness, right?
Absolutely.
And one of the huge failures is, and Austin summarized this very well. Austin's very good at really getting to that concrete point. Communicate risk, not details. Absolutely. Right? Communicate risk. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Austin. That's beautiful. Yes. So part of that too, and one of the big failures on the floor side of things, Tia, that I saw in the past is a false belief in the people who write the documentation, so quality and other groups, that if I write it, that means people will do it. No, not at all. You need to get that buy-in. You need to go out and talk with them and say, show me your process. How do you do things? Mm-hmm. And importantly, what do you do if it doesn't work?
Exactly. What happens when something breaks down? Yeah. I always used to tell my teams, your metal detector is going to fail as soon as an auditor asks you to do the check.
Guaranteed.
No matter what, that product is going to roll through the metal detector and it's going to keep on going down the line. Let's talk about what happens if the metal detector does not kick off. and walk them through that scenario and get them prepared for those situations, because most of the time it doesn't happen often, but it's always going to happen when the auditor is there. Oh, so getting them.
Right. Well, yeah. And then the auditor starts doing this, right? The pen comes up and he's like, Oh, and then they're just watching, right? They want to know what you're going to do next.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So always getting them prepared for that, but not just people on the floor, right? Even our managers and all the way up the organization, no matter what, the system is going to fail. What happens? We have procedures for this. We understand what happened. We practice these things, so just reminding people not to get flustered, to reference the documentation, right? And to ensure that they're following it. Because I love what you say about the documentation piece. Just because you write it, it doesn't mean they're going to do it. Most of the time you're writing it so you can show it to an auditor and say, this is what we do, right?
Yeah, you look at the quality standards, you write a procedure for it, and then you come down like Moses from the mountaintop with the tablets and you bestow them upon the team. Right. And then you walk away and everybody goes, nah.
Yeah, right. I know, like, nah. And you're like, you understand what I've written down? Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Nah, not doing it.
Yeah, and that is absolute death in a plant. If you get to the point where you create something like that and then you walk away and the operator goes to the supervisor, what? And the supervisor goes, don't worry about it. Keep doing it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hidden factory, right?
Yes. And that's what people don't realize about culture change. And, I think that we know this, but when we're in the middle of it and we're really trying to change a culture or trying to change the way, people do work, we think it's going to happen immediately. We think once we write it down, it's going to happen immediately, or that it's going to happen within a month or even within a year. It takes so much time for people to change and to build a culture, and that constant follow-up, that constant accountability, like even what you said, you roll it out and the supervisor's like, you don't have to do it. I'll talk to Tia later. Don't do it. And then they never come to talk to you. You never know they're not doing it until something happens and you're like, wait, we rolled this out. You have to continuously follow up with the team, go down and, if you're in a facility, going into the facility and saying, hey, we rolled this out yesterday. How's it going? What's giving you problems? How can we change it to help and still get to the eliminate the risk that we're trying to eliminate? Having those conversations. Oh, my supervisor said that it's really not that important. Oh, really? Okay. It is important. This is why. Continue to do it. Let me go talk with your manager and I'll have your manager follow up with you. So again, making that loop, and you could be doing that for a while before people really change and get, this is why this is important.
Exactly. And so part of this too is, one of the branches of philosophy is epistemology, and that's the mechanisms involved with thinking and how we as human beings process information. And one of the key aspects of that is we create abstractions. We have to, right? There's so many things going on around us. We can't keep track of it, right? And so magicians, right? That's why magicians are successful, because they make you look here when they're really doing something over here. Yeah. And we think, this is the weird thing, right? We think that as we're sitting here talking, that we're looking at everything around us. We are not.
No.
Our brain cannot process all that information. We're really, in reality, we're looking through a tiny little peephole that's moving around all the time.
Exactly.
And trying to get that information. So it's really important. And one of the things, and the reason I'm explaining this, is it's the same with people, right? We look in our careers and we look at what other people do and we create this abstraction. Right.
Yes.
So procurement, they buy a few things and they go out to lunch and our suppliers buy them lunch, and man, must be awesome to work in procurement. Those guys got it so easy.
Exactly.
And sales, they go out and make a bunch of wild promises and come back and go, yeah, I've made the sale and everybody loves them. And oh man, I should work in sales. They got it easy. Right.
Right.
Same with quality. Right?
Same.
Oh, quality. Those people, all they do is make up weird rules and try to keep us from doing what we need to do.
Exactly.
Right. And so really what we've been talking about here, I think this has been a great conversation, is how do you communicate up and how do you communicate down? They're different skill sets, right? So would I ever go into a training in a plant talking about epistemology? No. right? That's not the right language for that audience.
Right.
You need to understand how to effectively get that information over to people.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And figuring out those tools and those skills associated with that and linking that back to what they do. Super, super important. Right?
Absolutely.
So,
to the point of, sales are having fun. Maybe I should work over there. It's not that much work. I always tell people when, a lot of people are saying, I'm doing so much work. That manager's not doing work. The CEO's not doing work. That VP's not doing work. If you're the only person doing work, most likely we're not making any money, for the organization. So someone else has to be doing work in the organization in order for us to be successful. So it's all about looking at someone other perspective, right? And that's what influence is all about. It's understanding the other person's perspective. How do you put yourself in their shoes? What's in it for them? What do they care about? And then really thinking about that perspective and understanding how your perspective matches with that.
Yeah, well, and even take this to a personal level. Home life, right? If you don't do a good job of understanding how your spouse thinks and acts and operates and what is important to them, and you don't take that into account, you're going to have a lot of fights.
Absolutely.
You're going to have a lot of fights, right? And your life is not going to be that comfortable.
Right. Exactly. Everyone's going to say, you're not listening to me. You're not understanding. We've all been there.
Yeah. I'm doing it right now, right? So part of what people do is they're not listening, to your point, Tia, right? I'm already thinking about what I want to say when you're talking. And if you catch yourself doing that, you're like, oh, hold on a minute here. Tia's saying some good stuff. Listen to what she's saying.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that, because when you go into a situation and you're thinking about, I need to influence this person to do what I need them to do. When you go in, sometimes you're not listening. You're really just thinking about your procedure that you wrote, that you want them to roll out, that you want them to do. And that's looking, down the organization, up the organization, and across. You have something that you want them to do, and you going in with a mission, because people are like, you need to influence. But a piece of that is also listening and understanding where you can compromise, or understanding where you just hit the mark. Raphael, one of his statements is around that people are writing procedures in an office and there's no other employee participation. That means that you have kind of looked through your own peephole and you said, this is how I think it should be based off of my very limited knowledge. And I want everyone to do it. No and buts about it, right? Mm-hmm. But in reality, if you want a program to work, you need everyone's perspective, especially the person that's doing it. So being willing to compromise, to listen to what the organization is telling you, to say, okay, yes, we can make that change, and the risk is still eliminated.
Exactly. I mean, there's nothing worse, right? So one of the things that I do in my consulting business, and this is something that I would do when I would work for companies as well, is when you start, you need to listen a lot. Mm-hmm. Right? There's nothing worse than people who come into a new operation and say, well, at my old company, this is how we did it, right? And everybody's thinking, who cares? Right? We don't work there.
Right. Yeah.
You need to understand what we do first, and then take the best of what you know and help us build it. Right? Just because we did it in the past doesn't mean it's right.
Exactly. And I mean, it's even when we've been talking broadly about influence, but there's so many different influence techniques out there. In order for you to know which one to use, you have to listen, and you have to understand your person or the group that you're trying to influence. And that comes down to first listening. It doesn't matter how you influence at your last company or the last person you influence, you might not use the same technique. You might not communicate the same way. Maybe the last person you influenced had an awesome food safety background. And so you didn't need to connect with them on why HACCP is important or why you need to micro test. None of those, they already have that information. So at this point, you guys are just aligning on procedure. The next person you talk to might not have any of that background. Mm-hmm. So how are you communicating the risk to them without getting too detailed in areas that they're not going to understand overnight?
Yep. And what's great about this as well, Tia, is this type of discussion that we're having today, this applies to everything in your life, everything, right? Pick up those little clues, because one of the things you learn when you're learning effective communication and how to interact with other people is understanding their style, right? And so one of those is, how do they receive information? So there's little clues that people will say. I'm an auditory person. I'm really good at picking up things from sound, right? And so I will say things like, "Oh, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
That rings true. I can hear that," right? Things like that. Oh, right. So you need to take that into account. If, for example, I'm talking to you and you say, "Oh, okay, Bryan, I can see what you're saying." Oh, interesting. So if I turn around and say, "Oh, I can hear you," right? That's a mismatch.
Right. Exactly.
Right? It's these little things, and the entire field of communication and negotiation and persuasion and things like this. If you're in a technical field, again, right, the purpose of our talk today, that doesn't, it's completely obvious why we need to do this, and everyone should understand this. Oh man, are you going to crash and burn?
Absolutely. And we get stuck in that. We get stuck in that position where it's like, why don't they understand, especially working with clients who are in the startup industry, right? Like, we work with quite a bit of clients that are building their organizations in food. And a lot of them don't have a food background. And they definitely don't have a technical food safety background. So it's one of those things that it's assuming that people understand or know the things that they're supposed to do in order to get into the industry and continue to make food. But in reality, they don't, and that's why they're reaching out for help. So it's important for you to listen, for you to understand where they're coming from, to understand their products, and then communicate in a way that they understand what they need to do to eliminate risk. Because if you're working with an organization, a business who, like, this is what blood, sweat, and tears are put into this organization, they really want to know the risk. And how do I prevent the government from shutting me down? How do I get into retail organizations? They're thinking about, how do I grow without someone stopping me, because that's my livelihood. So that's really the risk that you're communicating, right? Like, if you don't do these certain things, then you're at risk for not entering the retail space. You're at risk for an auditor coming in and stopping production, or coming in and saying you need to do 10 different things that you're really not going to have the time to do in the amount of time they want you to follow up on it. So it's like those type of things, communicating those type of risks is so important, and understanding that looks different at a startup small business versus an organization that has plenty of resources, and they have 3 different people that you can talk to about micro, and how to roll it out at the organization, what's right and what's not right. Those conversations look different.
Yeah. Well, and part of this too, right, is understanding that how you're interacting with the person who is sharing information is critical. Right. So as I mentioned earlier, sending those verbal cues of how these activities work, right? So Tia and I are, half a continent away from each other. But when you're doing live streams like this, right? So part of this is, I'm not looking down at my screen. I'm looking at my camera, and I'm making eye contact with her, and I'm listening, and I'm acknowledging that I'm receiving this information, right? I can destroy all of that by doing this.
Yep, absolutely.
Now all of a sudden I've built a wall. And she knows that the information she's trying to convey isn't being received.
Right? Exactly. Or the person doesn't care about the information that you're giving. Yeah, absolutely. And think about it in your, in your normal work life, right? What meetings do you go in and you pull out your computer and you start typing away while someone's talking? And what meetings do you go in and you make sure that you don't have your computer around you? You don't have your phone. You're communicating what's important and what's not important to you.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. We're doing it all the time. All the time. So I received some really good feedback a few years ago when I was working in a company, and we did 360 feedback. Yeah. And one of the things I got from my team is that you're angry. I'm like, whoa, I mean, what? No, tell me about that. What's that mean? Well, what they said was, well, sometimes when we come to your office to see you and ask a question or something like that, you're looking at your computer and your face is like this. And they're like, so we just turn around and leave because we figure you're mad about something. And I'm like, oh, holy crap. No. That's my concentration face, right?
Right.
What's the saying? Resting bitch face, right? So right. That's my. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't realize I did that. I'm sorry. No, I'm not mad at all. I'm just thinking really hard about what it is and I'm working on, and I guess that's how I scrunch up my face right. when I do that. And I had no idea.
Right.
No idea I was doing that. Right.
Yeah.
So now imagine if I'm sitting in a meeting processing information with people and I start doing this.
They think that you do not like the message that's coming out.
Exactly. And my boss taught me as well too. One time he told me, he said, never play poker. And I'm like, why? He's like, whatever you're thinking, Bryan, is on your face. Right. So he figured out, and kudos to him, super smart guy, that if he was pitching me something and I went, he would stop and he would say, what? And I'm like, well, have you thought about this? Right. That's brilliant. That's people skill right there.
Absolutely. And, I love it too, that you were able to receive that feedback and even make a different decision. Now you're aware. Yeah. So that when you're in your office and you see someone come up, you might have that face on because that's the way you concentrate, but you immediately change your face when they come in and say, hello, come on in, exactly. Because now you know that maybe you had your resting bitch face on.
Yeah, exactly. So what is it? Yeah. Communication with other partners, but 80% of communication is nonverbal. Mm-hmm. And we need to understand that. If we're just operating in a technical mind space and we think that the information is all that matters, it's not. It is not. Musa asked a good question here. One of the most repeated messages I hear from top leaders in operations is how to turn 6-page procedures into single-page bullet points.
Oh.
What tips do you have for this? Awesome. So
that's a big one.
Yeah, it is. And what they're saying is we don't need a 90-page document, and they don't. Right? That's the weird thing. And I'm very grateful to you, Tia, because behind Tia, right above her head, is my book. And in that book, I have an entire section on quality systems and how to develop them. And guess what? It's not sitting in your office and doing it. One of the things, so here's a quick tip for everybody and for Musa as well, is go out on the floor. So if I'm going to create a procedure on how to receive goods into the plant, right? So trucks are showing up and receiving stuff. I don't sit in my office and think of how I think it should be done. Right. I go out on the floor and I talk with the team and say, okay, teach me. I'm a brand new employee here. Teach me how to receive. They're the experts. I'm not.
Absolutely.
And then what I weave into that process, and my goal out of that is to create a flow chart. And in that flow chart, I build in decision points. Mm-hmm. Okay, the truck shows up and there's no seals on the back. What do you do?
What do you do?
Do you just go and bring it in? No, right?
Right.
And so you gather that information, you create the flow chart, and then you go back to them and you say, okay, guys, here's the process as you explained it to me. What did I miss? Right. And every single time, something's not right. And like, oh, no. Now that I think about it, this needs to be before this, and then I'll
right,
do it.
Exactly.
And then I write the procedure, I write the decision points, and I create the recording form that matches it. Right. And then I give them a recording form and say, okay, play this recording form and see if it works. And I know if it works or not, if everything is filled out, or if things are crossed off, or if there's scratchies at the bottom of the page where they add stuff.
Right, exactly. I think too, we forget that, a lot of times we have long policies because we're trying to be compliant. Yeah. Right. Like Jill and I, we talked about this on our LinkedIn Live this past Wednesday, where, a lot of things that we do, we're trying to be compliant, or our auditor has said, I don't like the way this is worded, like add this in there or take this out. So we end up having really long procedures because of that. Those procedures can exist, but what people are using on the floor is a simplified version, that flow chart, the document that they are recording their information on. Simple, this is the procedure, this is the corrective action, this is who should be doing it. Simple information that they can use, that they don't have to flip through a book to understand how to do it if something were to break down, or like you said, if something comes in and a seal is broken. how are they supposed to respond? They don't need the whole section around corrective action that's a half a page long. They really just really need to know, what do I need to do? Do I need to reject? Do I need to do additional inspections? Do I need to do additional checks? Jill said pictures over words. Yeah. Absolutely. Put pictures in there. You can have that complementary documentation for the floor for your overall food safety program policy, if you must have a long food safety policy.
Right. 100%. Here's the dirty secret I'm going to let everybody in on. Training occurs on the floor. What? Absolutely. 100%. Training does not occur in the document. No. It occurs on the floor, right? So Tia comes to work for my plant, and I'm going to be training her, right? So it's like, hey, Tia, welcome to my company, Bryan's Cheese Company. I'm going to be teaching you how to run the filling machine. So here we go, right? And you and I worked together for a few weeks. And then my boss comes to me and says, hey, the new person, Tia, how's she working out, right? And there's only 3 answers, Tia. The first answer is, she's amazing. She's doing great. Good attitude, sharp. She's picking stuff up fast. I think about another week or so, we'll be able to let her run the machine by herself, and we'll see how she does. Oh, awesome. Amazing. Love it. The middle response is, well, she's doing okay. I've had to repeat a few things, a few minor mistakes, nothing serious. As long as she's supervised in the process, she's going to do fine. Mm-hmm. And of course, the third choice is, oh my God, no. She's coming to work late every day. She tried to start a fight with another employee in the lunchroom. Oh my God, no, this is not working out. We need to find somebody else, right?
Right.
That's how it works, right? The documentation is there to support the process.
Absolutely.
And remind them of what they're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. And I would even say influence happens on the floor.
Yes.
That happens in real time, and having those conversations. I was in a situation where at one of my facilities, we had very poor quality products at the consumer level. So we saw a lot of complaints around it. Being on the floor, observing, talking with people, I noticed that the ingredients we're bringing in were poor quality. So at the end of the day, we know the consumer is going to get something poor because what we're bringing in was poor quality. And I remember talking with my receiving supervisor, and he was like, yeah, this company receives poor quality all the time. And I'm like, the company? Aren't you responsible for this? And he's like, yeah, but I'm like, no, this is you. You are accepting it. And so then I really empowered him by saying, you have the ability to reject. You have my permission to reject this product if it is not up to our standards. Oh, well, what if my manager said, I am your manager's counterpart. So if your manager gives you pushback, I will help remove that barrier. You just make sure you're doing the right thing every time, and loop me in when you have an issue. And I remember the first time he got pushback from his manager, he called me and I said, do not worry about it. Go ahead and reject. I'll follow up with your manager. And things worked out, right? Because it was a pretty bad issue and it needed to be rejected. And he never got any problems from his manager. His manager never came to talk to him about it, and things worked out. So now he feels even more empowered to make the right decision over and over and over. And my job is to follow up with him. How did today go? Are you feeling good about it? It's that constant check-in. It's being on the floor. It's showing that, hey, this situation is going to work out. I'm here to support you. Right then, he was persuaded to do the right thing every single time. He was influenced to be able to do it. And then now he's the inspiration on the floor. He's my voice, right? Now he's talking to other people to say, oh no, do the right thing. If you get pushback, call Tia. She will be able to help you. She will be able to eliminate that barrier for you. So now I don't have to talk to every single person around. Now I have another person that's going out and spreading the message. And that's what we want.
Beautiful. I love that story. That is a perfect example. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
And by the way, guys, if you're not reading the comments in here, awesome comments, right? Everybody, thank you. Thank you for this feedback, right? So we'll kind of bring this back up to the top then, right? So people are probably thinking, well, I thought this was supposed to be a conversation about implementing food safety culture. It is.
It is.
It is, right? If you learn how to do this, you can do this with anything else that you need to do in your operations, and you're going to be successful, right? So you have to learn, and I'm going to say a dirty word here, you have to learn to think like a salesman. Oh my God, a salesman. Yes, we're all salesmen. Absolutely. We are 100%. Everybody is. Learn to sit on the other side of the table. See things from their viewpoint. And in that last story, that's exactly what Tia did, right? Yeah. She took into account, okay, there's this person and he's getting pressure from his boss. And that person is probably thinking, oh, geez, if I don't do what my boss thinks, he's probably going to fire me. And I'm going to miss my car payment. And I need this job.
Right.
I'm just going to do what I'm told and keep my head down. That fear, you need to understand that. Yeah. You need to learn how to influence.
Yes.
You only control so much. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. CEO, vice president of quality, supervisor, a guy running a machine. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Only
understanding what's in your control and what's out of your control, and how do you influence that?
Yeah. Learn how to negotiate. Here's what's funny. I'm an introvert. And I love to negotiate. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but I love to negotiate cars, right? So if I'm looking to buy a new car, oh my God, I
need to get a car. I should say,
I can help you. I can help you. Even in this market, I bought a car, maybe about a year ago or so, and I got an amazing deal.
Really?
In a market where there's hardly any cars.
This is actually the greatest takeaway, because my husband and I, we just moved from New York City, so we didn't have cars there. And so when we came to Baltimore, he got a car, and now I'm in the process of looking for one. And I'm like, I just don't want a car. I don't want to buy a car in this market. So I need to recruit you to help me.
Here's a quick negotiating tip for everybody. In a negotiation, you always think you have the weak hand. But guess what? The person on the other side of the table thinks that too. So if you are buying a house, right, you're like, oh, I love this house. This house is exactly perfect. It's in the right school district. It's absolutely the perfect layout. It's a beautiful home. I love it. Oh, guys, I hope they accept our offer. I hope it's not too low. I hope somebody else doesn't come in and outbid us. Oh, well, maybe we should, right? You just, round and round and round in your head. Well, guess what? On the other side of the table, the person selling the house is going, oh, geez, man, I really need to sell this house. I've got to move out to California for my new job. And, Tia and her husband seem like super awesome people. I really hope they buy this house. I hope they don't find something else before I get the offer from them. Exact same thing. Right? You have to understand that. And once you understand that, it takes away the power of that situation because you realize it, and then you can talk about it. So I promise only one tip. So that's the one tip I'll give.
I love that. I love that.
Here's another one for helping understand and get around to the other side of the table is the 3 F's: feel, felt, found. So for your example with that manager and with the employee on the floor, that interaction, right, is you can talk with that employee on the floor and they say, well, geez, I really need to bring this in and this product and stuff like that. You can say, I understand how you feel, right? I have been in your role and I felt that same way too, but here's what I found. Right? It's a good way to acknowledge what they're experiencing and then using that information and that commonality to then show them a path forward.
Yes.
Feel, felt, found. You'd be surprising how well that works.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yep. So a couple of little things I would hear from my notes is your personal style is not an excuse.
No.
I'm, like I said before, I'm a super introvert. I'm more than happy to stay at home and do live streams and work on my computer, right? And never see another person for a year, right? But you have to be aware of that. But what's interesting with this is introverts, as you're seeing right now, hopefully, is do really good at public speaking.
That is true.
Why? Right? Because that's not talking individually, right? Where I fail miserably is at a party or something and somebody comes up and starts talking to me. Right? I'm looking for a way out, right? Because that's right. That one-on-one interaction is what introverts are not good at, right? And that's what drains their power, right? That's what extroverts love, and they get strength from it.
We do.
Well, it's coming from me. It's coming from the introvert. Recognize that. Understand it.
Absolutely.
right?
And really, it's about seeing it from a different perspective and, putting yourself while still being yourself in a different perspective. So when you talk about sitting on the other side of the table, you might be an introvert, I might be an extrovert talking with an introvert, right? It's important for me to understand how are they feeling in the situation. And even if I am uncomfortable with the situation because it's outside of my normal way of interacting or my best case scenario, it's super important that you still sit there and have those conversations. I really like to say getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's influencing others and talking to people and rolling out new programs and building a culture. That is not comfortable at all. There's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of, do we have to do this? How do I put it in my budget? How do I get more money for my organization or influence someone to care about this? Like, that is uncomfortable to do. We all wish we could just come in and say the magic words and everyone's like, yeah, sure, let's go. Yeah, exactly. But it doesn't happen that way. So we have to, no matter what your personal style is, you're going to be uncomfortable at some point. So you have to be comfortable with sitting in that space.
Absolutely. And so, to kind of wrap this all up, right? So hopefully what you're seeing at the 30,000 foot level in this conversation is technical skills are developed and grown, and you learn and you get certifications and you become a Six Sigma black belt or whatever, right? You develop your toolkit. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? The other side of that, the personal side, the people side of things, it's exactly the same. You need to build your toolkit if you're going to be effective. If you have all this information and you can't share it with the people that you work with, and you can't use that information to help build a better company or a better business or whatever it is that you're doing, what good is it?
It's a waste.
It's a waste.
I always like to say your technical skills, that's the foundation. That's your base. Yeah. That's so people will know, okay, Tia knows what she's talking about because she has that technical base. It doesn't mean they're going to listen to you. It doesn't mean that they are going to roll out all of your ideas. It's just your base. However, in order to get people to listen and move forward and, change their culture or implement your programs, you have to have that people leadership.
Yep. And here's an important thing is people have to like you. If they don't like you, they're not going to work with you.
Absolutely. And that's around building relationships, which we didn't touch much on, but it's really underneath that umbrella of influence, is that it's hard to influence people that don't like you or don't know you. So you really have to focus on how do you build relationships. And when I start any new role, that's what I focus on first. Who do I need to get to know? Who do I need to learn their priorities? It's being that salesman sitting on the other side of the table. Well, you have to build that relationship and understand where they're coming from, who they are on a personal level, on a professional level, for you to be able to influence and work well with them. So people forget that step.
And then you'll be successful, right? Mm-hmm. Christopher had a good comment here. Oddly, sometimes age helps. Absolutely. So as we get older, we learn, we get that experience, and we kind of mellow a little bit. Right. So when we're 22, 23, right, we're the firebrands, running around trying to do all these things, change the world. Well, age helps. Absolutely. So thank you. What an amazing conversation. I know we could talk for another hour, but we're out of time. But before we leave as well, right, having gratitude and gratefulness is important as well. So I wanted to thank everybody here for joining us, right? This is a significant investment on your part, right? You're taking an hour out of your day to learn and grow. So thank you for doing that. We really appreciate that.
Yes.
And I also want to thank my sponsor, EAS Consulting. And they do some amazing trainings and things where you can learn skills like this and help grow. So check out easconsultinggroup.com and you can look at their training courses. And they also offer a 15% discount for my audience. So if you go there and you find a course you like, when you're checking out, put Bryan in the little promo code area, right? So it's with a Y, BRYAN, and 15% off. So gotta love that. So you learn and you get a discount. So thank you, EAS, for that. I really appreciate that as well. So great conversation. Thank you again, everybody. And we will be back here next Friday, not for Yorkie chat, but for the food safety chat. And so at the same time, so 8 a.m. Mountain Time, where I'm at here in Colorado, and 10 a.m. Eastern, where Tia is located. And let's talk all things food safety. So we'll see you back here next week. And in the meantime, have an awesome weekend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.